Let's face it, the winter months can be tough, feeling cooped up inside. But did you know that sprucing up your home can actually lift your spirits and help combat the winter blues? So, in today's video, I want to share 10 ideas for making your home feel cozier using only thrift store finds. I'll share my thrifted finds and I'll show you how I use them to create a cozy environment in my home. So, if you're ready to make the most of your time indoors this season, let's get started.
So, what makes a space feel cozy? Well, at the top of my list are unique items. Unique items make a space feel personal and meaningful, preventing it from feeling bland or generic. When I spotted this vintage radio turned lamp at Goodwill for $7, I didn't think about it. I just grabbed it. And I didn't care whether the lamp worked or not because I thought I could rewire it if I had to. But it did work. The wiring was a bit sketchy though, so I covered some bare wires with electrical tape, but eventually I'll need to rewire it. It came with a burlap shade that I thought was too small, so I tried out a few that I had on hand, and the one that I had just thrifted looked the best. Since the lamp had no harp, I needed a clip-on lampshade, but luckily the thrifted shade came with a lampshade adapter. Before adding the lamp to my family room, I gave it a good cleaning with feed-in wax, which really brightened up the wood. I placed it on top of an old leather trunk next to the wingback chair that I thrifted just a few weeks ago. I love that the light turns off and on by rotating the center dial. Textiles like pillows, throw blankets, and rugs add visual interest and depth to a space, making seating areas more inviting and comfortable. I found this pretty hooked pillow at the Habitat Re's store. I bought several things that totaled $14, so it probably only cost me $1 or $2. This chair now has multiple textures going on, making it an especially inviting place to sit.
You've all heard me talk about Magic Mind before, a performance shot made up of 12 super ingredients that helps me to stay focused and productive throughout the day. But Magic Mind is just one piece of the puzzle. It's also important that we establish healthy habits to set us up for mental success. It's like we need to invest in our mental wealth so that we are prepared when life throws us challenges. And one of the most important of those habits is a good night's sleep. We all know poor sleep equals poor productivity. But I refuse to use sleep medication because so often it leads to dependency. So I was very excited to learn about Magic Mind Sleep.
It's a blend of 11 real ingredients like lemon balm, chamomile, and organic kava, proven to help you fall asleep faster and to improve your sleep quality. And the best part, it's not habit forming.
Right now is a great time to give Magic Mind a try because they've created a bundle of both the Magic Mind Sleep and the performance shots. And if you use the link in my description box, you'll get 45% off the bundle. So let's make 2025 the year we build up our mental wealth with improved sleep, a sharper mind, and increased productivity.
Wood items exude warmth and add textural interest. Incorporating wood decor is also a subtle way of bringing in the outdoors. You might remember that for a long time I used a large piece of metal wall decor as my fireplace screen, but I've been looking for something different and I finally found it this week, a footboard from a vintage twin bed. I cleaned it up with some feed-in wax and then I popped off the wheels to make it just a bit shorter. It was a nearly perfect size, but it needed something along the bottom to obstruct the view of the firebox. And I chose a flat woven basket filled with some greenery and birch branches. Woven baskets, like wood, are organic, so they add visual interest and a sense of warmth. In case you're wondering, this is a gas fireplace. And yes, I will move the footboard anytime we light it up. I hope you didn't pack away all of your candlesticks with your Christmas decor. I have them in nearly every room of my house, year-round. The candle stands themselves are visually interesting, and lit candles emit a warm, comforting glow that you just can't get from electrical lighting. Lanterns, regardless of whether they hold a candle, are beautiful decorative objects that evoke a sense of nostalgia, creating a warm and inviting atmosphere. This copper-colored lantern was large enough to hold a small vignette. I had also thrifted a vintage Chinese checkers game with a wood board. I ultimately decided to use it as a tabletop on a small stool in the front living room. I think this adds a playful and quirky touch and will likely lead to the game being used much more often. At first, I thought this lamp was wood, but on closer inspection, I think it's made from resin or something similar. Since I don't need any more lamps, I'm going to use it as a piece of sculpture. Isn't it funny, though, that if this had just been a decorative piece, the thrift store would have charged me twice what I paid for the lamp? And it's not hard to remove the electrical parts. I like to save them for a time when I might want to turn something else into a lamp. Once all the wire and parts were removed, the metal lamp pipe stuck out the top about 2 inches. I could have easily cut it off, but I decided to use it to hold a ceramic bird in place. Since I could still see a bit of the pipe below the bird, I wrapped some greenery stems around it. I noticed a few scratches that revealed the white resin or plaster underneath, so to conceal them, I brushed black rub and buff on those spots, and it worked like a charm. Vintage furniture with its unique character, warm tones, and often handcrafted details adds a touch of nostalgia and personality to a space, creating a sense of warmth and comfort. I had been looking for a different end table for the family room for a while and thought this old sewing machine cabinet would be an interesting choice. From my research, I believe it was built in 1913, so it's really old and really heavy. I first wanted to remove the sewing machine. It only took me a few minutes of removing screws to figure out how to get it out of the cabinet. It must have been in a garage or barn because it was filthy. So I wiped it down with some warm soapy water. Then, after I moved it into the family room, I wiped it down again using feed-in wax. The cabinet was so dry, the wood quickly soaked up the feed-in wax. A small decorative piece came off while I was cleaning it, so I reattached it with some wood glue. I kept the decor on top to a minimum because this is where my husband sits, and he doesn't like too much decor. The treadle across the bottom was a great spot for another thrift store basket. I filled it with current magazines and a few faux fern stems for a touch of greenery. Vintage mirrors and frames are timeless and add character and warmth, creating a space that feels both inviting and full of history. I printed out a vintage image of a hydrangea to add to the frame to mimic the dried hydrangeas on the mantle. Although this thrift store frame is newer, it will look vintage when mixed in with older items. I brushed on some gold rub and buff to highlight the raised areas of the frame, and then used some black rub and buff to tone down some areas where I got too much gold wax. I set the frame inside an empty vintage frame for a layered look. I still have a Christmas swag hanging over the mirror in the bar. It's attached to an empty frame, and the frame is propped against the mirror. I think it looks so nice in this spot, so I'm just going to remove the large Christmas ornament and replace it with some blue hydrangeas. I just stuck the stems in the swag and they stayed in place, and I think it looks very wintry now. I also thrifted this ornate frame for just $10, and I'm going to layer it with a previously thrifted round mirror over the large empty frame. Aged metals like tarnished silver or antique brass, with their warm glow and patina, help to create a cozy, lived-in ambiance. I thrifted this brass lamp base a few months ago, but hadn't found a use for it yet. So for now, I decided to leave it as is and use it like a vase for some droopy greenery. I'm also going to use the lid off of a vintage tin as a piece of artwork. So I propped it up on a small easel. Then I tied a piece of velvet ribbon around the rim to create a pretty edge. To finish out the vignette, I added a wood clock box with a bird and nest inside, a vintage clock, and some colorful old books. Old books in warm tones with textured spines create a sense of warmth and intellectual curiosity, making any space feel more inviting and comfortable. While thrifting, I came across a few educational childcraft books with lovely orange linen covers that I added to my school-themed vignette. I also thrifted a few larger books to add to those that I already had, so I would have enough to create a display of coffee table books. I made 4 piles of 2 to 3 books each. Then I decided to add decorative boxes to the top of each pile. I have a lot of boxes, so I tried out a few different options and decided that I liked the look of the vintage tin boxes the best. And I had just found a new tin box in a sewing machine drawer. To dress up the tin, I searched online for vintage sewing-related images in the public domain and printed one to put on the top of the box. To apply it, I brushed Mod Podge on the back of the paper and on the lid and pressed it into place. When the Mod Podge was dry, I distressed the paper, especially the edges and corners, with sandpaper, and then brushed on a top coat of Mod Podge. Artwork adds a personal touch and reflects your individual style, which impacts the mood and atmosphere of a room. I'm especially drawn to original paintings. Just knowing it is a handcrafted, one-of-a-kind item makes it extra special. I don't have a lot of wall space, so I use a lot of vintage artwork and prints on bookshelves to create a layered look. I also like to add unique finds to my bookshelves, like this taxidermy duck that I thrifted for $20. I thought I would add my new sewing machine to the shelves too. To make it a bit more narrow, I removed the sewing plate that stuck out a few inches. Thanks so much for watching today. And if you'd like more ideas for creating a cozy home, here's another video you might find helpful.